For years, Portugal has been the go-to destination for expats looking for 300 days of sunshine per year, safety, affordable quality healthcare, and a cost of living that is lower than many European countries.
But Portugal may not be the only place that allows expats to soak up the sun without breaking the bank. And in this video, we're going to talk about Croatia and whether that is a country that is something that you should consider if you are planning to move abroad.
Now, a little context, if you're new to the channel, we're Matt and Dawn, and we moved to Portugal 2 years ago. And on this channel, we help people live, work, and travel abroad over 50.
If that's your goal, we encourage you to subscribe to this channel as well as to our free weekly newsletter. We'll leave a link in the description below.
We recently spent some time in Croatia, and within just a few minutes of arriving, it was clear why so many people absolutely rave about this country.
Yeah, we kept asking ourselves, how was Croatia not even on our radar when we were deciding what country to move to a few years ago?
Now, we love living in Portugal, and we do not regret our decision, and we're not planning to go anywhere. But if we were starting the search over today for a country to move to in Europe, Croatia definitely would have been a serious contender.
It would have been. Now, first let's talk about some of the things that Portugal and Croatia have in common. And both regions have a lot of sunshine. And if you compare the southern coast of Portugal, called the Algarve, with the Dalmatian coast of Croatia, you'll find that they both have about 300 days of sun a year. Both have very warm summers and mild winters, and both offer a laid-back, primarily beach lifestyle.
Another thing that Portugal and Croatia both have in common is tons of stunning coastline. Both countries have about 1,700 kilometers of coastline on the mainland. Croatia has more than 1,000 islands, so they have even more coastline. But both countries, if you dream of coastal living, both countries are going to give you miles and miles and miles to choose from.
Another area of similarity between Portugal and Croatia has to do with the relatively low cost of living. Now, both countries have a cost of living that is significantly lower than many countries within the EU and absolutely way lower than cost of living in the United States. So on average in Portugal, the cost of living would require that you have 1,600 to 1,800 euros per month. In Croatia, it would be between 1,300 and 1,600 euros per month. So in a similar ballpark. Now, look, it's going to depend on where you live and how you live. That will determine your actual expenses, of course. But certainly, cost of living in Portugal and in Croatia are much less expensive than a lot of other places in Europe or North America. Now, there are a couple of areas where Portugal has the edge over Croatia.
Now, both countries are incredibly safe, but Portugal does have a bit of an edge here. Portugal is actually ranked 7th for safety in the world, and Croatia is ranked 19th. Just for context, the US is ranked 132nd. We felt very safe during our entire time in Croatia.
Yeah, we sure did. And healthcare is another area where Portugal has a slight edge over Croatia. Now, in terms of quality of care, well, first let me say this. Both Portugal and Croatia have universal health coverage. But in terms of quality of care, Portugal is ranked 23rd and Croatia is ranked 48th. The United States, just for a point of reference, is right there in the middle at 36. But even though Portugal ranks higher than Croatia in some areas, there are some things that Croatia has that Portugal just doesn't.
Now, one thing to consider is lifestyle. Now, Portugal and Croatia on the surface might seem like they have a very similar lifestyle. Both have 300 days of sunshine, both have miles and miles of coastline. But there is a difference, and that is that Portugal is on the Atlantic, of course, and Croatia is on the Adriatic. Now, here in Portugal, that means that a lot of the coastline is wild and dramatic and not always warm or swimmable. Now, this is something that we personally love, but maybe you are somebody who just envisions yourself on a boat all summer long and jumping into water that feels as warm as a bathtub. It just depends on what you're after. So if you like warmer waters, and Croatia has lots of coves and inlets and bays, it's just more protected.
Croatia also has the edge over Portugal currently in real estate prices. Now, I mean, we know this certainly as residents here in Portugal, but real estate prices in Portugal have really gone up dramatically over the last several years. And while you can absolutely find very expensive real estate in Croatia, that is for sure, you can also find homes with sea views near the beach, honestly, for less money than you would in order to find a similar place here in Portugal.
Yeah, it's actually really hard to find anything comparable in Portugal right now. Another thing to consider about Croatia over Portugal is proximity. Now, in Croatia, you are just a 2 to 5 hour drive or train ride from places like Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, Austria, Bosnia, Montenegro, which means that it would be easy to take a weekend trip in a place like Venice or Vienna or Budapest.
Yeah, it's a little bit different here in Portugal. I mean, Portugal's all the way on the edge of Europe and is only connected to Europe just by Spain. And Spain's a big country. So, well, we can drive to Madrid in 5 or 6 hours or drive to Seville in 5 or 6 hours. It's not as if we can easily drive to other places beyond that. And we love Spain. So we have made that trip several times. But we honestly, in order to go to other countries, we're hopping on planes because it's just too long a drive. But if you love the idea of hopping in a car and exploring other countries, Croatia has a lot more options.
Now, another thing to consider when you're thinking about Portugal versus Croatia is language. Now, English is widely spoken in Portugal, but it is more widely spoken in Croatia. Now, of course, we always advocate for learning the language of whichever country you move to, but a country where English is more widely spoken may make that initial transition a little easier.
Let's also talk about taxes where Croatia has an edge, both in personal income tax as well as the corporate tax. So personal income taxes, Croatia is a little bit less than Portugal, but once you get above 60,000 euros of income, Croatia is meaningfully less. It can make a big difference. On corporate income taxes, Croatia has a flat tax rate of 10% for profits on businesses that have revenues of under €1 million a year. And in Portugal, their flat tax is 20% for corporations that have revenues of €1.5 million a year. But in Portugal as well, some cities or some municipalities are able to also tack on a tax of up to 1.5%. So there is a meaningful difference between those two countries.
However, an important caveat to consider is that Portugal does have a tax treaty with the United States and Croatia does not. So definitely consult with a tax professional about your specific situation.
So how do Portugal and Croatia compare in terms of visa requirements? Well, let's take a look at the two most popular visas that get issued: a retirement-oriented visa as well as a digital nomad visa.
Now, neither country has a retirement visa per se, but in Portugal, most would use a D7, and in Croatia, it would be a temporary or what is known as an other purposes residence permit. So both countries have some of the lowest income requirements in Europe. For example, on Portugal's D7, it currently requires a minimum income of 870 euros per month to apply. And in Croatia, that for the other purposes residence permit, they require between 700 and 800 euros per month.
And in both countries, if you come in on these visas, you can apply for permanent residency after 5 years. Now, Portugal's, their D7 visa is good for 2 years out of the gate. And then after 2 years, you need to renew it for the next 3. And then at the 5-year point, you can apply for a permanent residency. In Croatia, that residence permit is only good for 1 year, but you can renew it every year. And then after 5 years, you can apply for that permanent residency.
So pretty similar, really, when you're looking at those two visas. But when it comes to digital nomad visas, there are some key differences.
That's right. In Portugal, the digital nomad visa requires that you have 3,280 euros of income from sources outside of Portugal. Now, that digital nomad visa is good for 1 year. You can renew it year after year, of course, and it is a pathway to citizenship here in Portugal.
Now, things work very differently in Croatia for their digital nomad visa. First, the income requirement is lower at 2,540 euros per month. However, it is not renewable automatically year after year. You actually have to reapply. And the other thing to consider is that it is not a pathway to citizenship. So that digital nomad visa is really ideal if you just want to go live in Croatia for a year, for example, which would not be a bad year.
So would we choose Croatia over Portugal today? Well, we'd love to hear from you. Why don't you put your decision in the comment section below? We'd love to hear from you. So Dawn, if you were making the decision today on where to move, and I know we made that decision a few years ago, but if we were making that decision today, would Croatia be the choice you would make?
Well, you know, it's so funny because everybody's so different, right? What are our preferences might be different than your preferences, and that's really the whole point of why we do these videos. But I think first, we don't really like to be hot. There's a reason that we moved to the Silver Coast and not to the Algarve, and so that would be a factor. And the other thing is that Portugal is much larger than Croatia. There's a lot more to explore. There's a lot more microclimates. Croatia is about 60% the size of Portugal, and a lot of that is not habitable because of all the islands where nobody lives. And so I really love Portugal. I love exploring all the different history, all the different climates. It's a lot more variety in the country. When we were in Croatia, we did spend time on the coast, and we also spent time at Plitvice. I'm going to butcher that name no matter how many times I try, park, which was beautiful, and it was a different climate. But I just think for us, Portugal has more to offer. However, I wouldn't be mad if we picked Croatia, and it would be a serious contender if we were starting our search today. I think we'd probably still choose Portugal. What about you?
Well, it would be a serious contender. I think one of the super advantages of Croatia is its closeness to other cities in other countries that you could explore within Europe. In addition, the drive, and I know that we talked a little bit about the coastal drive earlier, but you know, we used to live on the California coast, and that drive down Highway 1 was spectacular. The drive on the Dalmatian coast, just south of Dubrovnik, basically at the airport, all the way up to Split, it's incredible. So if you have a chance to take that drive is incredible. And Dawn mentioned the Plitvice Park, a national park within Croatia. Spectacular park with, I don't know if it's 1,000 waterfalls. It's got to be close to 1,000 waterfalls. It was a phenomenal place to go. All that said, it's a great place for us to visit. It's a great place for us to explore. But I think for us, if we were making the decision today, I think we would likely choose Portugal again.
That said, we can't wait to go back to Croatia. But we'd love to hear from you, as Matt said. Which one would you choose and why? Or which one have you chose and why? And if you are just starting the search, thinking about moving abroad and wondering what country might be right for you, we have an entire playlist called Moving to Europe. We'll leave that link here.
Oh, there's one other thing. The beaches in Croatia are all rocks.
That's true.
And the beaches in Portugal, most of them, at least the ones that we're familiar with, are all sand. So if you like running on the beach, running your dog on the beach, walking on the beach, just easier in Portugal.
And if we're just tacking things on randomly to this video, I just want to say that as much as we love the Dalmatian coast drive, it is a stunning drive. Portugal's drive along the coast, especially here on the Silver Coast where we live, is nothing to sneeze at either. So
that's true.
Both are spectacular.
All right, we'll see you soon.